Hi, and welcome to Across the Desk. Well, here we are, starting off Season 7, and we're going to do like we always do with the odd number seasons. And we're going to highlight the bills that are going into the legislature that they put in there. Now, some of these are just really outlandish and crazy. They won't even make it through committee, but that's what we like to talk about here on Across the Desk. And first up is Senate Bill 129. Senate Bill 129. It's called the Millstone Act. Now, why is it called the Millstone Act? Well, because there's some biblical story that goes in about millstones being tied around necks to save children, or that's how David Bullard put it, the author of this bill. Well, anyway, what this does is it actually prevents gender-affirming care and transitioning care to anyone under 26 years old. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, wait a minute, 26? Isn't that a legal tax-paying adult? Well, yeah, it would be. So would the 21-year-old, the 22-year-old, the 23-year-old, and the 24-year-old, and the 25-year-old, as well as the 18-year-old, the 19-year-old, and the 20-year-old to some degree. But that's what David Bullard wants to do. He wants to prevent these people from getting gender transitioning care. And it's almost logical when you think about it, because I can see where he's coming from. Because, see, to a guy like David Bullard, he's thinking, if I can get these people to make it illegal for them to get this care for under 26, well, you know, by that time they're done with puberty, they've already grown into full-grown adults. It's a little too late for them to do any of this other stuff, to really transition into anything. So he's thinking he can solve the problem by preventing grown tax-paying adults from getting this care. When they become full-grown and everything else, he thinks that's just going to solve the problem. Because you see, people like Senator David Bullard, they're cowards. And this is what the problem is, see? These people, these transgendered people, these transsexuals, whatever you want to call them, they scare him to no end. And he doesn't know any of them. He probably will never meet one. Probably could never put a face to a name or a name to a face, but these people scare him so bad, turn him into such a mass of anxiety and goo that he has to write a law to keep them from doing anything. And it's really a cynical law when you think about it. It's very un-American and draconian and anti-freedom when you think about it. Because these are tax-paying American adults that he's preventing from getting this care. And it's not just surgical care. This also goes in with hormone treatments, hormone blocker drugs, goes in, and it also goes in with mental health services too when it comes to transgendering and transitioning into another gender. It includes that too. See, he's trying to prevent all of that, all of it, and also prevent any kind of government payments, whether it be Medicare, Medicaid, or anything else, from going to pay for any of this. See, because the deal is, see, Senator David Bullard looks at these people as evil, and he doesn't like them, even though he doesn't know them, and he wants them to suffer. So this is the best way he can do it, with a piece of big government legislation designed to go after and harm people he doesn't like. Hey, that's a conservative value. Harm those who you fear the most. That's what they do. That's exactly what this bill does. And it doesn't just concentrate on transgender people or transsexuals or anything else. No, it goes after the doctors too. Of course it does. Because what would a conservative bill be if it didn't scare the bejeebies out of medical professionals, engineers, scientists, or anybody else to keep them from wanting to come to Oklahoma? You know, we have such a brain drain in this state, especially when it comes to STEM-type professionalisms and careers. So this is not going to help that. It's actually probably going to scare people away from this state. And not just the people that do gender-affirming stuff or anything else. This goes in with anybody else, OBGYNs and all of it. It keeps them from wanting to come here. Well, you know what? If this state is so draconian that they're going to put me in jail for 10 years and fine me $100,000, well, I'll just go over here to Missouri, or I'll just go over here to Illinois, or I'll go over to Arizona, or Utah, or anywhere else besides Oklahoma. So see, when it comes down to it, what Senator David Bullard is really doing is keeping us at the bottom of the list when it comes to states. That's what he does. That's why we're at the bottom of the list. They always talk about this top 10 state baloney. But you know, Conservatives have been in charge of this state for at least 17 years with all the branches and everything else. Heck, all the statewide offices have been held by Republicans since 2009. So that's what, 14 years? And then it's been 2004 since they've held the legislature and everything else. So Republicans have been charged for quite a while here in Oklahoma. And it's so low as where it is today. It's not because of liberals. It's not because of Democrats. It's not because of transgender people and the people giving them care. See? Because this really didn't become a whole issue until national politics picked it up. So now, because of national politics, people like David Bullard got to get on the bandwagon with all this fear, hate, anxiety, and cowardice. That's what he's doing. That's what he's trying to do. He's trying to, hey, look at me. I'm harming these people we don't know. Send me money. And that's exactly what he's trying to do with this. Hey, build up my profile. So we got this law that keeps people from getting the care they need if they're under 26 when it comes to transgendering into the sex that they weren't born as. And it goes further than that, like I was saying. It goes into any kind of gender transitioning items, puberty blockers, counseling and mental health care, cosmetics and surgery. Also, this also has other penalties too. It's not just giving this and giving the care to these people. It's also referrals. So if you're a physician, and someone comes to you wanting this care, you can't even refer them to anybody else, even out of state. Hey, we don't do that here in Oklahoma, but, over in Nebraska, there's a doctor couldn't even do that. Because in this law, if he does, they can be brought up before the medical board and have their license revoked. And wow, yeah, have your medical license revoked from Oklahoma. Come here to Oklahoma and work as a medical professional where we will take your license away if you do what we don't like. That sounds like such a great selling point. Well, this is what you get with Senator David Bullard. This is the cowardice. This is the manifestation of the fear and the anxiety of this guy. He's such a coward. And that's exactly what this all comes down to. It comes down to his religious views, and you have to share his religious views or it's going to drive him to so much anxiety and no end that he can't stand it. So he has to force this law up on everybody. On everybody. Big government conservative law. A bill. It's not a law yet until they sign it. It's not a law or anything until it even gets past committee. Which I don't know. Telling people who are tax-paying adults and have been for several years that the government's going to tell you you can't do something. Wow. That is a level of authoritarianism that I just really didn't see coming. But it's really worse than that. Because when it comes down to all of this, you see, it all comes down to the doctor involved. And really there is some really cynical, very cowardly way that they put the things in his bill that goes after these doctors. Because you see, not only will they go after your license if you just refer it to another doctor out of state, but they will fine you up to $100,000 and put you in jail for 10 years on a Class A felony if you do any of these procedures. Much if you even just give somebody a prescription to these drugs. If you so much as do any kind of mental health counseling for transgender care, you can be a felon, 10 years in prison, $100,000 fine. And it gets worse than that, because you see, these patients who've been so harmed by these doctors, because David Bullard is so sure these doctors are just harming these kids, because that's what he calls it, right? It's the Millstone Act to protect these children that are under 26. You see, harming these children, they don't know it. So they get to sue these doctors. Yeah, they get to sue the doctors. So if all of a sudden you're an adult who has all this gender-affirming care and everything else, and all of a sudden you decide that you don't want it or anything else, or that you just need the money, you can sue the doctor. You can sue them for their personal assets. Yeah, you can. Oh, and if this happened to you before you were 18, after you were 18, you can go ahead and sue them then too. Oh, and the best part is, if you win, you get all your lawyer fees paid by the doctor. Now, this is the tricky part of the law, because it says, and I quote, anyone who establishes a violation of this law will get their money reimbursed to them by the doctor, of course. Right? So tell me something. If you're a doctor and you go to court and somebody's suing you and you win, did you establish a violation of this law? No, you didn't. You actually did the opposite. So guess what? You get to pay your lawyer fees. So somebody can take you to court, anybody really in this law, take you to court, take a doctor to court, sue them for their personal assets, and if they lose, the doctor still has to pay. And there's no recourse for the doctor, as it says, hey man, you have to establish that there was a violation of this law in order to get your money back. That's how David Bullard puts it in this law. It's so cynical. Of course he did it this way. It's a part of conservative cowardice I like to call the likes to dish it. Just too big of a coward to take it, because here he is, wanting people to sue these doctors to no end because he doesn't like them. You see, they're performing these gender-affirming cares and these gender-transitioning medical procedures that he doesn't like. So these people have to suffer. They have to be punished, and he's going to use the force of big government in order to do it. And that's all what David Bullard is doing. It's what he's doing here with this. It's such a disgusting, cynical law to go after doctors in this way, to prevent tax-paying American adults from getting the health care that they want. That's what this is doing. That's what it does. That's what David Bullard does in this. He takes these people's freedoms away. He takes their rights away. He takes their 14th Amendment protections away. And he doesn't even know any of them. Well, this is Across the Desk. We're back for Season 7. And we're going to see you guys next week.